It's one of the most famous songs in the world. A simple ballad, gentle, almost a lullaby. You've heard it at weddings, in movies, on the radio for decades. It feels pure. It's a song about unconditional love, stripped down to its most basic promise. And when you look at the writing credits, you see his name, the singer, of course he wrote it, or at least co-wrote it. It sounds like it came straight from his heart, but it didn't. He didn't write a single note of the music. He didn't write a single word of the lyric. Yet, his name is on it right next to another person who also didn't write it. The man who actually did write it is nowhere to be found on the official record. And the story behind that simple fact tells you everything you need to know about fame, money, and power in the middle of the 20th century. It's a story about a boy who became a king, and the man who owned the kingdom. To understand why this happened, you have to understand the world of 1956, and you have to understand the two men at the center of it all. One was a 21-year-old from Tupelo, Mississippi. The other was a man in his late 40s with a mysterious past and a carnival barker's soul. The young man was, by this point, a phenomenon. He had exploded out of Memphis just a year or two before. He moved in a way people had never seen. He sang in a way that blended sounds people thought should be kept separate. He was raw energy, he was dangerous, he was the kid your parents warned you about, and that made him irresistible. He had signed with a major record label, RCA Victor, and his first singles for them were already monster hits. Heartbreak Hotel, Don't Be Cruel, Hound Dog. These songs weren't just hits, they were cultural events. They were a line in the sand. But one thing this young man was not, for the most part, was a songwriter. He was an interpreter, a master stylist. He could take a song, any song, and inhabit it. He could twist it, shape it, and make it his own. He was a filter through which music passed and came out electrified. His genius was in the performance, the voice, the charisma, the physical presence. The writing of the songs themselves was left to others, the professionals in the Brill Building in New York or the hustlers in Nashville. He was the talent, the star. The other man was his manager. He called himself the Colonel. Or Colonel Tom Parker. He wasn't a real colonel, of course. That was just part of the act. He had a knack for promotion, for seeing the angle, for understanding that show business was 90% business and 10% show. He had learned his trade in the circus and at carnivals, managing acts like the Great Parker Pony Circus and a troupe of dancing chickens. He knew how to sell a ticket. He knew how to build a myth. And in this young singer, he saw the greatest attraction of his life. Vera Parker's philosophy was simple, total control. He didn't just manage his star, he owned the entire operation. He controlled the image, the press, the merchandise, the concerts, and, most importantly, the money. He was fiercely protected and brutally pragmatic. To him, the singer was not an artist. He was a product, a very, very valuable product that needed to be marketed correctly to ensure maximum long-term profit. And Parker knew where the real long-term money was in the music industry. It wasn't just in record sales. It wasn't just in concert tickets. The real, enduring money, the kind that flows in for decades, was in music publishing. Here's how it works, in simple terms. Every song is a piece of property. The people who write the words and the music own that property. Every time the song is sold on a record, played on the radio, or performed in a movie, the owners of the song get paid. This is called a royalty. It's a small slice of a big pie, but when you have a hit song, those small slices add up to a fortune. Vera Parker understood this better than anyone, so he set up his own music publishing companies, and he made a rule. It was a simple, non-negotiable rule. If his star was going to record a song, his publishing company had to have a piece of the ownership. He didn't care who wrote it. He didn't care if the writers were famous or unknown. If they wanted the biggest star in the world to sing their song and the guaranteed hit that came with it, they had to give up a piece of the pie. Often, that meant giving up a third of the publishing rights, sometimes more. But Parker took it a step further. He often insisted that his singer get a piece of the writing credit itself. This was a common practice back then, known as a cut-in. A powerful singer or manager could demand a co-writing credit as a condition for recording a song. It was a power play. It meant that not only would Parker's company get publishing money, but the singer himself would get a direct share of the royalties as a writer. It was a way to double dip. It wasn't ethical, it wasn't fair to the actual writer. But in the dog-eat-dog world of the 1950s music business, it was business, and Parker was the master of the business. This brings us to Hollywood. By 1956, Parker knew the next step for his product was movies. Movies meant a bigger audience, more exposure, and a whole new level of stardom. He secured a multi-picture deal with a major studio, 20th Century Fox. The first film was a drama set during the Civil War. The singer was cast in a supporting role. His character wasn't even supposed to sing. He was meant to be a serious actor, but the studio executives were nervous. They had the hottest musical act on the planet under contract. Why wouldn't they have him sing? It was a guaranteed way to sell tickets and soundtracks, so the script was changed. They decided they needed 4 songs for him to perform in the movie. The studio's musical director was a man named Ken Darby. Darby was a respected composer and arranger. He'd won Academy Awards. He was a serious, seasoned professional. He was tasked with finding or writing the music for the film. The title of the movie was originally The Reno Brothers, but once the songs became part of the plan, the studio wanted a title song. A big, memorable ballad. Darby knew just the thing. He remembered an old American folk melody from the 19th century. It was a beautiful, haunting tune called Oralia. It was written in 1861, and it had been popular with soldiers on both sides during the Civil War. This made it a perfect fit for the movie's setting. The melody was in the public domain, which meant no one owned it. It was free to use. So Ken Darby took the melody of Oralia. He kept its gentle, flowing structure. But he wrote entirely new lyrics. He crafted a simple, tender poem about love and devotion. The words were his. The arrangement was his. He built the song from the ground up, using that old melody as his foundation. He created the song that would become the centerpiece of the film. When he was done, he presented it to the producers and to the singer. The singer loved it. He instinctively knew how to sing it. He softened his voice, pulling back from the raw power of his rock and roll hits. He sang it with a genuine sweetness that surprised everyone. The performance was magic. Then came the business. Colonel Parker stepped in. He told the studio and he told Ken Darby his rule. If the boy sings the song, he gets a piece of the writing credit. His publishing company, of course, would get its share of the publishing rights. This was not a negotiation. It was a condition of employment. The studio was not going to argue. They had their multi-million-dollar star. They were not going to let a dispute over writing credits derail their big movie. They needed him. They needed the song. What was Ken Darby to do? He was a studio employee. He was up against the most powerful manager in the music industry and the biggest star in the world. He could refuse, and the song would be dropped. The studio would find another song. Someone else would get the hit. His work would sit on a shelf. Or he could play the game. He could give up the credit, secure his place in the film, and get paid for his work as the musical director. He made the pragmatic choice. He agreed to the deal, but he had his own bit of pride. Darby was a respected composer. He didn't want his own name, Ken Darby, appearing on the credits next to the singers as if they had actually collaborated. It would look strange to his peers in the industry. It would feel like a lie with his name attached to it. So he made a clever move. He assigned his half of the writing credit to his wife. Her name was Vera Mattson. She was not a songwriter. She was a homemaker, but her name would now be on the song. And so the official credit was registered. The song was written by 2 people, the singer and Vera Mattson. 2 people who had absolutely nothing to do with its creation. The singer, who sang it beautifully but contributed no words or music, and the wife of the actual writer whose only contribution was her name. Ken Darby, the man who adapted the melody and wrote every single word, was officially invisible. His son later explained that his father had no illusions about it. He understood the business. He called it the Parker Treaty. You signed it, or you didn't get to play. The song was recorded in August 1956. The studio, recognizing they had a massive hit on their hands, decided to change the name of the entire movie to match the song's title. Before the film was even released, RCA Rush released the single. It was an unprecedented success. It received over 1 million advance orders, something that had never happened before. It went straight to #1 on the charts and stayed there for weeks. It sold more than 3 million copies in its first run. The song defined a whole new side of the singer. It showed the world he wasn't just a hip-shaking rebel. He could be a romantic balladeer. It broadened his appeal to parents and a wider audience. It became one of his signature songs, a staple of his concerts for the rest of his life. It became an anthem. And with every record sold, with every spin on the radio, with every play in the movie, the royalty checks flowed. They flowed to the singer's bank account. They flowed into Colonel Parker's publishing company. And they flowed to Vera Mattson, who passed them on to her husband, Ken Darby. Darby made money, to be sure. But the singer and his manager made a fortune from a song he never wrote, all because of a deal made in a Hollywood studio. Did the singer know what was happening? Almost certainly. He was young, but he wasn't naive. He trusted the Colonel to handle all his business. He saw deals like this as part of the price of fame. His job was to show up and perform. The Colonel's job was to make the deals and count the money. It was a partnership that worked, and it made them both incredibly rich. He never pretended to be a songwriter. When asked about it, he would often say things like, "I just have ideas." He knew his strength was in his performance. The credits were just paperwork, a business arrangement he benefited from. This story wasn't unique. The music industry was filled with these kinds of arrangements. Powerful people always found ways to take a piece of the creative pie. But this case is perhaps the most famous example. It involves the biggest star and one of his most beloved songs. It's a perfect illustration of the machine behind the magic. You see a young man pouring his heart out, singing with a gentle, sincere voice. You hear a timeless melody and a lyric that speaks of perfect love. The performance is real. The emotion is real. But the story behind it, the story of its ownership, is a cold, hard business transaction. It's a story of a carnival barker's rules being applied to art. It's a story of a system where a hit was so valuable that the people who made it had to give a piece of it away to the person who delivered it to the world. It reminds us that the songs we love don't just appear out of thin air. They are products of a time and a place, an industry with its own rules and its own power players. A simple 3-minute ballad can contain a complex history of ambition, compromise, and commerce. The man who wrote the song was Ken Darby. The man who got the credit was Elvis Presley. The song, of course, is Love Me Tender.